I want us to build the best franchise in the National Football League, from the way that we travel to the way that we do things, the way that we treat people. I want to be a part of the best organization in pro football.
Hey everybody, what's up? Trey Wingo here, and welcome into a special bonus edition of Half Forgotten History. It's a Bourbon Time episode, courtesy of our friends at Maker's Mark, because we're reclaiming the hour of 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern as your time to sit down and do whatever it is you do. Maybe have a glass of Maker's Mark straight bourbon whiskey. Our friend and guest in this week's special episode is Panthers head coach Matt Rhule. I've known Matt for a while. Followed his collegiate career. He coached my alma mater, Baylor University, for some seasons and turned around the program. He's trying to do that now in the NFL, although it's under very challenging circumstances. His first year was the 2020 season when they had no offseason because of COVID. And now, of course, all the vaccinations and the rise of the Delta variant have created all kinds of problems in camp again. So here now, enjoy a very special bonus Bourbon Time episode of Half Forgotten History with my friend, Panthers head coach Matt Rhule. All right, Matt, let's start here. What would 2021 Panthers head coach Matt Rhule say to 2020 Panthers rookie head coach Matt Rhule that really would have helped him a year ago?
Good luck. No, you know what? I think I would have told myself, roll with it as it comes. Take everything as it comes, because there was a lot of adversity last year. I woke up every morning, went to see if there was a new email about a new protocol. We were all, as a society, trying to figure out what was happening. I was dealing with kids, new schools, trying to take care of them. But every day, walking into a new environment, last year, I was shaking people's hands and introducing myself. Yeah. Now I know everyone. So I would have just told myself, hey, don't stress too much about everything. Just take it as it comes. But the benefit is, on the backside, you're going to be a way better coach for having been through it than if you had not been through it.
Right. Well, I always felt like the first-year head coaches last year really had to be thrown in a blender. And obviously you had been a part of an NFL staff with the Giants that one year in 2012. But to be thrown in as a first-time head coach in the NFL with essentially no way of dealing with your players for an entire offseason, how much of a handicap was that?
I think it was a huge handicap. It was a handicap in terms of building relationships. Yeah. There's a difference between having a contact or knowing someone and having a relationship with someone. And I don't care what people say. This is a relationship business. I mean, guys go out there week in and week out and sacrifice for the team. And it's hard to ask people to do that when they don't really know, does this guy care about me? Does this guy have my best interest? Does he know what he's talking about? I think as you go through OTAs in the spring, you build those connections, and we didn't have those last year. And I think the second thing, which is often underlooked, is you really don't know what you have. Yeah. It's one thing to teach the players, and you can teach a lot of things, virtually, but we got to about game 3 and realized, some of these things that we thought we could do, they don't fit our skill set the best. And there was no, the time to try things out, experiment with things. That's the spring. That's early in training camp. And we were doing that game 1, game 2, game 3. So it took us to about game 3 to really realize, okay, this is the scheme. This is these are the plays that best fit our personnel.
And I think that's the essence of coaching that sometimes is lost, right? I think a lot of people have a plan and then they want to implement the plan, but then you realize that won't work for the talent that you have. And that's the adjustment that really is the most critical.
Yeah, people always talk about halftime adjustments,
Yeah.
And I'm like, halftime adjustments? You're making adjustments after the first 5 plays of the game if you're any good. And,
yeah.
I was at the Texas High School Coaches Association Hall of Honor. A good friend of mine, Joey McGuire from Baylor, was inducted. And I was looking at all those coaches and talking to a bunch of guys, and it's they coach at the highest level of coaching, not in terms of how the world sees it, but they take the kids that walk into their building, and they adapt what they do to fit those players. And I think that's the approach you have to take at this level. One year you could have a guy that does something really well. The next year, you have a new player and he does something different better. And you had better adjust, and you had better be flexible. And you want to have some core beliefs and some core philosophies, but the tactics to get those done can change, and they can change in a moment.
you had the 1 year with the Giants staff, but for most of your coaching career, you were at the collegiate level. What was the biggest difference that you noticed being a head coach at a big-time college program and being a head coach in the NFL? What was the biggest thing that was different?
Personnel decisions, saying goodbye to guys, releasing guys, waiving guys. Guy comes in and he gives you his all, and he's a good football player and he's a good person and you love to coach him. At the college level, you develop guys for 4 years and then eventually they graduate and move on. Whereas here, you could be developing and working with a player for weeks, and all of a sudden one day he's no longer here anymore. And so that to me is a huge difference. It's one that, to be honest with you, I didn't really like. I much preferred not having to waive guys, but it's part of the business of the NFL.
Yeah, and so last year was a very strange year across the league because of all the COVID restrictions, but it's still here, and we're getting a lot of pushback. Not a lot of pushback. We're hearing some pushback from some very prominent players about whether or not they're going to take the vaccine and why they feel like they should or shouldn't have to take the vaccine. Obviously, as a Tier 1 personnel, you've had to be vaccinated per the NFL policy. So what message do you try and send to the players to try and tell them, hey, guys, look, like we all have choices we got to make here, and if you want to be part of what we're doing here, this is the way the NFL is telling us we have to do it?
Yeah, well, I'll say this first. I mean, I think we're amongst the top, 1, 2, or 3 most vaccinated teams in the National Football League. So from our staff to our players, there's been a huge commitment by the Carolina Panthers to be vaccinated. So a lot of that work was done on the front end. I always tell people, like, you have decisions to make, and I'm never going to tell you what decision to make. But make no mistake, the best thing for our team, the best thing for the Carolina Panthers is to have as many people as possible vaccinated. It allows us to operate in a different way. It allows us to not have the fear or the distractions of guys being out week to week. I mean, there's just no doubt that it's better for us as an organization. Now, still, as a man, as a woman that works here, you have to decide what you want to do. But as for me, I got vaccinated. My wife got vaccinated. My son got vaccinated. So I'm not asking you to do anything that I didn't do. So I've dealt with it on a very individual basis. Everyone's coming from a different place, but it is clear that it is the best thing for our organization. Now, whether it's right for you or not, I've tried to leave it up to guys. And all I've asked, Trey, is like, before you make a decision, like just do it based off real information. Like I'll get anyone you want to talk to you. Talk to our doctors, talk to your own doctors. Just don't make it based off of information you heard or something someone told you. Make it based off of scientific fact and finding, and then we'll live with whatever you decide.
Yeah, there's a lot of Facebook doctorates out there that I think sometimes get people confused. But it is to the point this year where, I mean, the NFL was pretty flexible about it last year, I thought, and basically gave players a lot of leeway before the vaccine was out there. But now the consequences are real. And as someone who is preaching, we're in this together. If there's someone that is still very reluctant, how do you sort of get them to understand you could cost us games now without feel like you're browbeating them?
Yeah, and I don't believe I can ever get anyone to understand. I just try to present facts, and I try to present how I see it, and then people have to make their minds up. I just really think it's that simple. And I think it's worked. That's the good thing is, I think it's worked. And I've said that a couple of times, and our PR people come running to me and saying, hey, you're getting beaten up for saying I'm not telling guys they need to get vaccinated. It's not my place. I'm not a doctor. I just know as the head football coach of the Carolina Panthers, hey, this is what's best for us to operate and give ourselves an advantage. And for the most part, pretty much everyone's done it.
All right, so obviously let's look forward to the 2021 season now. And the big move you guys made in the offseason was trading for Sam Darnold. In what you saw of Sam in New York and what he didn't have to work with in New York, what made this move right for you guys?
Well, I looked at it like there was all kinds of things out there, like hey, who do we want the quarterback of the future to be? Do we draft one? I mean, a lot of tough decisions, and I looked at it pretty simply like, this is a chance to get Sam Darnold plus J.C. Horn. We looked at J.C. Horn and said, this is one of those guys who doesn't come along very often, and we get what we think is one of the top young quarterbacks that's out there. And I think when you look at young quarterbacks, everyone wants you to be a master carpenter without being an apprentice carpenter. Like everyone wants you to jump from stage 1 to stage 6. And if you look at most of the quarterbacks over the years, like they develop on good teams to become elite quarterbacks. And so we think we're building a good team. We think we have a good foundation. And we thought Sam, he's 23 years old. He's played 3 years in New York. Coming into our system, we know it. We know he's starting over. But I think he's got the mindset. I think he's got one thing you see when you watch them play. He's got the moxie. He's got the toughness. And the more you asked about him, the more you realize that the people who've coached him and the players who played with him respected him. Yeah. And so to me, when you have a guy who works hard, who players respect, who plays with some moxie and some toughness, we just want to get him here, develop him, and again, the things that have hurt him, we want to be part of the solution for him.
One thing you just said, I think people don't understand enough. He's played 3 years in the league, and he's only 23 years old. I mean, that part of it, I think, from your perspective, can't be overstated because you still have a guy potentially, if things work out, that could be there for a decade, 15 years.
Yeah, I always look at it and say, and I don't want to talk about other people, but Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre. Steve Young, I played a little bit in Tampa Bay, but he sat behind Joe Montana. Like a lot of the great quarterbacks had a time to learn. They played mop-up duty. They went out there and played in some preseason games. They played the other team's quarterback, and they were able to develop. And, development is something that people talk about, but it's really hard to do. Yeah. People say they're going to be patient. It's really hard to do. And so to me, Sam's played 3 years. He's young. But he has to develop in our system. And every day can't be a referendum on, where Sam Darnold is. Like, I hope he has bad practices. I tell him all the time, man, I hope you have a bad practice here soon. Like, I hope you make mistakes because we really only learn from our mistakes. And, we try to learn from others and all that. But really, at the end of the day, like, what changes our behaviors when we make a mistake. And so having him in the spring, he's a worker. He's a grinder. He takes things personally. He's a good teammate. He's a guy you root for. Now we all have to go out there and put him in good positions.
It's okay, by the way, to mention Aaron Rodgers. I think everyone this offseason has mentioned his name 20 or 30 times. So you're just keeping up with the rest of us. I wouldn't worry about that. But
purely talking about him at his beginning of the show.
Theoretically waiting. I get it. But it is funny you mentioned the bad practice thing because I have to chuckle. Look, I love football. I've always loved football. But in the social media era of covering football that we're in, it kind of makes me laugh. And I'm sure it exasperates you at times when you see someone live tweeting 7-on-7 drills and it's like, hey, he threw 4 incompletions or, there were 3 interceptions. It's like it doesn't really matter. I think that everybody is so thirsty for football, and it just proves where football is in the power rankings of sports in this country, that any sort of nugget of information that someone can get sometimes is treated like the Rosetta Stone. As a coach, how do you deal with that?
As best you can. I mean, it's not going away and it's not changing.
No.
So I think the biggest thing is, as a head coach, and I'm so unique in that I've been an NFL head coach for 1 year, but I was a college coach for 7 years. And, when you have 18 to 22-year-old kids, they're dealing with the same things. Just trying to be a consistent force in their lives, right? Just trying to preach the same boring message. I mean, like you can listen to like David Goggins, Jocko Willink, the late, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan. You listen to anybody who's elite at what they do, and they basically talk over and over and over again about being willing to work harder than the next man and being willing to do things that other people don't do and being willing to embrace failure. And so, like, as a coach, you have to just keep giving that message, like, this is what it takes to be great. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It happens over time. And along the way, there's going to be a lot of adversity. And so I remind myself of that. That's why I think I'm a better coach now than I was this time last year, because I tried to embrace the adversity of last year. And I hope Sam embraces the adversity he's had his first 3 years and allows that to push and propel him into a great new future.
One other thing with Sam, which I thought was interesting, you made the trade before the draft, and you said we're going to pick up his option, but you didn't have to pick up the option until after the draft was over. Was there any part of the Panthers organization that was like, well, let's just see how things shake out in the draft, and maybe something else might become available to us, and then we'll figure out whether we're going to pick up that option?
Well, I think part of it too was, there might have been a little bit of that. There also was, we were in a position where a lot of people could trade up, and we would have a chance to maybe gain assets. Yeah. And the thought of, hey, they might take a quarterback, could drive that market. And so we got to that spot, and there wasn't the market that we wanted, and so we had offers, but we went ahead and pulled the trigger on JC because we're so convicted on him. But to me, this is about keeping as many options open and trying to drive a trade market. I think you saw later in the draft, we made a lot of trades, and we knew that, as part of this thing that we're trying to build, heading into year two, that the more good players we could get on in this past draft, the better it would be for us this year, but really more importantly 2 and 3 years down the line.
All right, why don't we take a quick break, and when we come back with Matt Rhule, talk more about what his expectations are in his second season as head coach of the Carolina Panthers. Coming right back with Matt Rhule right after this. This episode of Half Forgotten History is brought to you by Bourbon Time. Even if you don't have the traditional 9-to-5 schedule, there's no denying that this past year has changed the way that work and rest intersect. Without a designated office to come home from, we're missing that natural break in our days. And our friends at Maker's Mark recognize this phenomenon and want to help us out a little bit. Beat the burnout and start blocking off the hour of 6 to 7 p.m. as your me time when you do what you love for you and only you. For me, I like to sit back with a nice drink of Maker's Mark over some ice. And what I love about Maker's Mark is it's so smooth. There's no bitterness, and it's silky, kind of like all of Ron Burgundy's ties. It's fantastic. So let's make the idea of bourbon time a reality. Join me in reclaiming 6 to 7 p.m. as the happiest hour so you can do whatever it is that makes you happy. And if it involves a glass of bourbon, remember to drink Maker's Mark responsibly. Maker's Mark Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, 45% alcohol by volume, copyright 2021, Maker's Mark Distillery Incorporated, Loretto, Kentucky. Coach, we've all sort of had to find a way to deal with getting away from work with everything that's going on in the world with the pandemic that's been around us. How have you found time sort of just to have that separation from work to relaxation where you can sort of switch it off for a little bit?
Yeah, I'm not great at switching it off, but I am great at spending time with my family and my kids. I try not to let work bleed into the things that are important for them. If I'm at Leona's soccer match, it's the most important thing in the world. If I'm at Vivi's swimming contest, it's the most important thing in the world. So I think, my wife and I do a good job of spending time together, going to dinner, hanging out together. I love to read. So reading's a great time for me to kind of, try to shut my brain off. I try to play a little golf, but I'm terrible. It makes me want to go back to the office. So that doesn't help. And then this summer, we go up, we're Jersey Shore people. We go up to the shore and that's always been really nice for us, just to, the sand and all that. Quite often I have a notebook and I'm writing as I'm sitting in the beach, but it is what it is.
Just kind of curiosity, what kind of stuff do you like to read?
I like to read everything from mindset books to books about football to books about business to psychology.
Oh, look at it. We're going to the Matt Rhule library here. I love it. What do we got?
These are the books these are the books that I'll read during training camp. So I'll try to not.
Well, read those off first for those that'll be listening instead of viewing. What are the Matt Rhule training camp books?
Intangibles by Joe and Ryan. It's an awesome book. It's about is there such thing as team chemistry? And I think it's following the 2012, about halfway through it, San Francisco Giants, and how some teams are better than the sum of their parts. Jesse Itzler, Living with the Monks. I read Living with a Seal. Gotten to know him a little bit. It's a pretty cool guy. I've read this once before, but I'm rereading it at the suggestion of AJ Bouye, whose corner we picked up.
Absolutely.
It's Tim Grover, Relentless, and it's a sports mindset book. And then finally, The Fighter's Mind. I read this not a long time ago, but I'm rereading it a little bit. So, I'll work on those books. I'm one of those guys. I read like a chapter of one book and then go to the other book, read a chapter of that book, and just kind of slowly work my way through a couple so my ADD doesn't kick in.
I was about to say, that's impressive that you can do that and pick up where you were at one book at one time and remember where you were in the next one at the next time, right? That's not the easiest thing in the world to do.
Yeah, I just have a pen. I keep working. I use Audible too, so I listen to books as well. So I'm listening to 4 different books right now, and I just just listen. I get in the car. I try to spend my time in the car listening to books or podcasts as opposed to listening to music. I mean, I'll throw a little Dave or Chris Stapleton on when I need to just relax. But and between listening to books and reading books, I'm just trying my best to learn from others so that I don't have to learn just from my own mistakes.
Well, if I can suggest a podcast, Half Forgotten History, Trey Wingo presents YouTube. Tremendous. You might want to just might download that. It'll give you plenty of episodes to filter through. I want to give you a book recommendation too. I'm sure you've read it. Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah, one of my favorites. One of my absolute favorites.
The thing that
I have his book, The Bomber. I haven't read it. The athletic trainer gave it to me. His book, which I think was a podcast, that turned into a book, like the Bomber Squadron. I don't know, but that'll be after camp.
Yeah, my favorite thing about the Outliers book was the whole premise was it's not doing something, it's doing the same thing 10,000 times under unique circumstances that sometimes makes you great or not, which I thought was the coolest thing about the book.
That's right, 10,000 hours or 10 years, and that research comes from Erickson. It's fascinating, and it's like it just talks about the difference between experts and novices. It's the concept of mastery, and that's why, I bringing it back to football. Like, you're asking a quarterback who's been in the NFL for a year or two to be an expert. Like, why is Tom Brady, why is Drew Brees, why are they so great at it? Because they spent 10 years. They've got more than 10,000 hours. They see every little thing, and it's obviously some of it's innate, but a lot of it has just come from time. And so you got to give guys time to become experts.
And in the situation that you're in with the Panthers, you obviously got a big long-term deal right away. So you have some time, but obviously time goes pretty quickly in the NFL. What are the things you need to address as the head coach for the Panthers this coming season to make sure it's a better season than it was a year ago?
We have to be better in every regard. I think when, we had a bunch of games come down to the very end of the game and we didn't execute to win games when we had a chance to turn the ball over in key moments. Special teams weren't good enough. I just don't, I'd hate to put it on any one thing. There were games where we couldn't get off the field on third down. So I think for all of us, it's just year two in the system. Year two, when I say system, like just our total program, and then offense, defense, and special teams, really understanding not just what we're asking you to do, but how we want you to do it and why we want you to do it. And I think when you have that, players start to have real ownership. And so, but at the end of the day, when you're 5-11, you have a lot of close losses. Everyone has close losses. We've got to really take a lead.
Well, the one thing I think that I've learned in all these years, covering the NFL, and Bill Belichick mentions it all the time, that most games are not won, they're lost. Like, if you can minimize your mistakes, you more likely than not are going to win more football games than you'll lose. Is that something you preach to your team?
Yeah, I think that's like I think if you go back to Temple University, to Baylor, to here, like the first thing I talk about all the time is like, don't beat ourselves.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you beat yourself not because you don't care or because you're unfocused, but because you're trying to do too much. And we want to be a team that just stays within ourselves. Does the things that we do well, trusts our training, and goes out there and plays football and has fun. Like when you try to do too much, you end up, you try to make a play, you make a play for the other team sometimes. And so getting all of our guys, and that's why coming away to training camp is so important for us. You build relationships, but you really build trust. And trust is what, you need to have a good football team.
Well, you need trust, and you need players to play to their levels. And obviously it certainly hurt you guys last year when McCaffrey was out. What are your expectations for Christian this year? Because the year before he had that spectacular 1,000 season, which, by the way, I don't know how you feel about it. To me, that's the benchmark for excellence at a running back anymore. You can have a 2,000-yard rusher, and that's great. But if you can have a guy who can excel in two areas of the field at the same time and be that productive, to me, that's like the gold standard of running backs now. So how important is whatever the Carolina Panthers success is going to be, how much of that is tied to Christian being Christian 2019 Christian?
Yeah, and I think Christian, I want him to be, I want him to be 2021 Christian. And here's what I mean by that. I think he learned a lot last year. I think like sitting back and watching his perspective, like he's almost got like a coach's perspective now. Like he's always been the guy that like no one works as hard as him, no one spends as much time as him. He's an absolute grinder. He's a great teammate. But I think one of the biggest things is he has perspective now after just kind of having to sit back and watch. And I expect him to go out there and, statistics are great, but great players cause winning. And I think Christian is the type of player for us that can help us win, that can cause us to win. And I think he's ready to do that. I think he's going to have a great year.
Yeah, listen, he was just so spectacular the year before. And you're always a little trepidatious with running backs, but, are there any concerns long-term for you with him based on durability or anything like that?
No, not at all. Not one bit at all. I mean, he, it was what it was last year. I mean, just, I think at the running back position, you're gonna get hit. You're gonna get struck. People always talk about, how valuable is the running back position, but in most games, your running backs carry they touch the ball 50% of the time. The greatest of receivers, if they have a 10-catch game, it's like, it's a huge game. So, running backs, they touch the ball a lot. There's going to be things that happen, but no one prepares better. No one takes better care of themselves. And I think last year was a great year for Christian physically to reset. And I know this, he's more than ready to go.
Listen, we'll get into your college coaching in a minute because I know there's some great stories there I want to talk to you about. But how much or at all do you think about if the list of coaches that have made the leap from being really good at college to really good in the NFL? Because off the top of my head, it goes, in somewhat modern times, Dick Vermeil, Jimmy Johnson, Pete Carroll, and I guess you could throw Jim Harbaugh in there a little bit, taking the Niners to the Super Bowl one year.
Tom Coughlin.
Tom Coughlin for sure. As a member, you were part of his staff, no question about that. But the list is short, right? Like, how much do you think about that, or do you think about that at all?
I don't. I mean, I got that question a lot as I went through the different interview processes. Yeah. And I think, the issue is that there's a great divide in college football between the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah.
There is no such divide in the National Football League, right? It's one of the few leagues that the salary cap and all those things. The league is designed. When you have success, you get a harder schedule. When you have success, you draft later. So it's designed, to have parity. And I think when you win in college at the have schools, and you go to the NFL, it can be a little bit difficult, not for everybody, but for some people. I think when you've won at schools that aren't the haves, I'm not saying the have-nots. I mean, Baylor certainly is a have, but it doesn't have the budget of Oklahoma. It doesn't have the budget of Alabama. When you've won at Temple, you've learned to look at the place and say to yourself, okay, how do we win here? Sometimes some college coaches, they have fiefdoms. Like when they say something, it happens no matter what, and then. If you're a guy like me and you're at Temple and you're getting to work with your athletic director and all the other sports to make things happen, when you're at Baylor and you're a part of the athletic department, not just your own entity. When you come into the National Football League, these buildings have owners, they have businesses, they have human resource departments. You're someone who knows how to work with everyone. So I think I was uniquely prepared from those two places to see that, like, hey, the key when you get to the National Football League is to maximize your assets and maximize the things that you have. You're not going to just win because you out-recruited everybody. And at the same time, you have to work really well within the structure of the organization. That's why I felt like, hey, you know what, I'll have a chance to be successful. And, I went down this year. We were on vacation. I went and spent the morning with Coach Johnson, Jimmy Johnson, because he made that jump. I obviously worked for Tom Coughlin. And at the end of the day, people who are great with people, people who motivate and bring the best out in people, they're always going to be successful. And you recognize that within 5 minutes of talking to Jimmy Johnson. And hopefully we'll do that here.
Speaking of successful, look, the stock answer is winning the Super Bowl. We all know that. But there's also realistic expectations. So year 2 for the Carolina Panthers, what would you consider it to be a successful season?
When I was at the Giants, Jerry Reese said this to me one time. He said, obviously we want to win the Super Bowl every year. Not sure if we will. It's hard to do. No one's ever done it every year.
Right. Except for Tom Brady.
That's right. So we wanted to be a team at the New York Giants that came down the stretch every year with fighting to go to the playoffs and have a chance to go win the Super Bowl. Yeah. And so, I look at us in year 2 and we're better. We have a lot of questions, but we're better. We're the youngest team in the National Football League. But I would like us to be a team as you come down the stretch in November and December that is fighting to go to the playoffs, that is fighting to get into the tournament. And then once you get there, who knows what happens. And so there's a lot of things that have to happen. I would love for us just to be a way better football team. I'd love for us to do all the little things better than we did them last year, and we will. I'll just say that, and we will. But I'd like for us to make a run and go try to be a team that if you come to our games in December and people are taking their hard-earned money to come watch us play, they're coming to watch a game that could decide, hey, are we going to win the division? Hey, are we going to be a wild card? Hey, are we going to go get into the tournament? And that's my goal.
Well, listen, we certainly saw that last year. People look at the Bucs and the display they put on in the Super Bowl, but they had to play wild card weekend, and quite frankly, they had their hands full with Tyler Helinski and the Washington football team on wild card weekend before they found their rhythm. And that was the first time we've seen the team play on wild card weekend play in the Super Bowl since the Ravens made it back there in Super Bowl 47. And with only the top seeds getting the bye, it certainly feels like that might be more of a possibility going forward. All right, let's take one more break here with Matt Rhule. When we come back, we'll talk about the things that happened before he got to the Carolina Panthers and how he became sort of the grand fixer-upper, if you will, of college football, taking dilapidated programs and making them successful. Back with Matt Rhule right after this. This episode of Half Forgotten History is brought to you by Bourbon Time. Even if you don't have the traditional 9-to-5 schedule, there's no denying that this past year has changed the way that work and rest intersect. Without a designated office to come home from, we're missing that natural break in our days. And our friends at Maker's Mark recognize this phenomenon and want to help us out a little bit. Beat the burnout and start blocking off the hour of 6 to 7 p.m. as your me time when you do what you love for you and only you. For me, I like to sit back with a nice drink of Maker's Mark over some ice, and what I love about Maker's Mark is it's so smooth. There's no bitterness, and it's silky, kind of like all of Ron Burgundy's ties. It's fantastic. So let's make the idea of bourbon time a reality. Join me in reclaiming 6 to 7 p.m. as the happiest hour so you can do whatever it is that makes you happy. And if it involves a glass of bourbon, remember to drink Maker's Mark responsibly. Maker's Mark Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, 45% alcohol by volume, copyright 2021, Maker's Mark Distillery Incorporated, Loretto, Kentucky. All right, so we're talking with Carolina Panthers head coach Matt Rhule, but long before he was the Panthers head coach, he was considered the grand architect in college football. Matt, you were a walk-on at Penn State, parlayed that into playing time. You sort of bounced around for a few years, and then got your first big break when Steve Addazio left Temple to go be the BC head coach, and you turned around a Temple program and brought them back-to-back double-digit wins seasons for the first time, since 1941, I think it was. What is it? And then you did the same thing at Baylor when you went there. You won one win the first year after the whole Art Briles mess, and then 7-6 in a bowl win the next year, and then 10 wins the year after that. What is it about you that allows you to build from basically the stripping down to the studs and bringing them back up?
That first year we were 0-5 at Temple, and I got a call from Dick Vermeil, who you brought up before, and I barely knew him. He was friends with a trustee. He had come to a practice one time. He said, "Matt, I know what you're going through right now. Like, don't just do me a favor. Don't listen to anyone. Just do what you think is right. Stick to what you believe in. Don't panic, and see it through." And I got to the end of that year, and everyone wanted me to fire everybody, and I said, "No, we're not going to do things differently. We're just going to do them better." Yeah. And I think that belief and that adherence in the process that we have, I think that desire not to panic, even though you're getting a lot of pressure to panic, doing what you think is right. I think just making it about people, like, at the end of the day, like, you play freshmen and sophomores and you're not that good, but that eventually, like, you can see where they can be if you practice and believe in them. And then the willingness to just take it on the chin, you know what I mean? Like, if you're willing to stand there while people say you can't coach and that you shouldn't be coaching, I always tell my teams, the famous quote, like, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they try to kill you, and then they build monuments to you. Like, just go through those stages and just be the same guy the whole time. So I think those are the things that we did. We constantly tried to find ways to do things better. Like, we are in a perpetual pursuit of better. I always tell people it's hard to work here because we could be doing something really well and I'm going to question it. And I expect our coaches to question me. We're trying to always find a way to do something better. And I think that's really it. I'll say this. I'll say, Temple was one thing. Baylor was a whole other thing. Baylor was I thought going to be, a little bit messy, and it was a mess unlike anything else. But at the end of the day, Baylor's a great place, and it had great people. And so, I went there, and I took Bruce Arians' advice. When I got the Temple job, Bruce called me, and he said, listen, when I was coaching there, we had to practice in an armory. We had nothing. But just remember this, at Temple, you have everything you need. You have great people. And I went to Baylor, and I found great people like Mac Rhodes, like Scott Drew, like Kim Mulkey, like so many more, like our players, and just tried to focus on the positives when everything else, all the noise from the outside world was, shut the program down, do this. And I just told our guys, like, let's control what we can control and take it one day at a time. And, we went 1-11. That wasn't very good, but we just stayed the course, didn't panic, focused on the people, tried to get 1% better every day, and pretty soon we were in the Sugar Bowl.
It is amazing. Like, I knew you were going to probably leave Temple because someone has back-to-back double-digit wins, at Temple seasons. They think, okay, this guy can build. But what made the idea of, like you said, stepping into that mess? And I can say that because it was my alma mater. What made the idea of stepping into that mess and wanting to go through that again appealing to you? That was the part I never could quite understand.
There's a lot of things. I felt like it was time to leave Temple. We had done all we could do, and it was time for someone else to take a turn. And I had some opportunities. And I really believed in Mac Rhodes, the athletic director. I knew him. And I think, to be great at anything, you have to have a great partnership. Like, it has to be you and your owner, or you and your AD. You have to bet on that person. Baylor's a Baptist school, and, my dad's a minister. And I felt like, who else is a football coach who's the son of a minister, that could understand that, it's not just about coming here and coaching great football. It's also about observing, living, defending, upholding the greater mission of the university. And I wanted to be in Texas. I said to myself, like, I don't want to get on a plane every weekend and go recruit everywhere. Like, that's not me. Like, I want to get in my car, and I want kids to play for me that can, the parents can come see them. They can drive. I just like the idea, and I wanted to go to Texas and see if I could do it there. So it was as scary a decision as I've ever made. And when I say Julie and I made that decision. Man, we were sitting there at a restaurant in New York City, like two opportunities in hand, and we took Baylor. But I felt very much so like we were supposed to be there. And I'll say this, I took that job not knowing if we'd be successful, but I believed that someone had to go there and get the football program right, had to move the program past the, whatever industry. I'm not going to get into that, but like just indiscretions and whatever had happened. I wanted to
move the program. It was a mess. It was a mess.
Yeah. And I also think that, Trey, one thing that people forget is that even bad teams, like even that 1-11 team, they need a good coach too. They need someone who's teaching them about life. They need someone who's pushing and developing them. So I said to myself, I don't know if we'll do it on the field, but we can do something really special off the field here. And you know what? We did it off the field, and we did it on the field as well. And I can wear my Baylor green very, very proudly, when I go places.
Yeah, listen, one thing about Waco, it is centrally located. I mean, I-35 North gets you to Dallas, I-35 South gets you to Austin. The Waco, Temple, Killeen, the great central Texas metroplex can be a great launching pad for a lot of places. I knew eventually you were going to get offers in the NFL. And we had actually talked about that a little bit over text while you were there. When did you really think, okay, this might happen sooner than I thought?
I think that when it happened, like, I had conversations that, the previous 2 years, and it just never was right. Yeah. I thought this year, what we had done was, had brought the place full circle. Everyone was graduating. We were winning community service awards. We were doing the right things off the field. We were in the Big 12 championship game. We finally beat Texas. Finally beat TCU. Two things I wanted to do. I wanted to get Oklahoma, but I couldn't get Coach Riley. He's so good at what he does.
Oh, you had him for that one game. Damn it!
I know. Took him to the Sugar Bowl. So I felt like, hey, we had done what we came to do, right? Like, we had, I always told our guys, like, you guys will be a 30 for 30 someday. Like, I don't know if nationally people can ever understand like what it was like on the inside, like going from where we were to where we ended up. But I thought the whole narrative had changed, and we had done what we were called to do, and it was time to go do something else. And I had a chance to meet Mr. Tepper, and like I said, I believe in true partnerships, great partnerships. And when I was at Temple, I had a great athletic director in Pat Kraft, now the head AD at Boston College, like a partner. I had Mac Rhodes at Baylor, and I knew I wanted to have that same partnership. And so when I met David Tepper, I was like, okay, this is the type of guy that like that I can go work for and know that every day I have a partner. I'm not just working for someone; I'm working with someone to get something done. And so I think meeting Mr. Tepper was when I knew, hey, this is time.
Well, it's interesting because Mr. Tepper, as you call him, I'll call him David because he doesn't sign my checks. David said something at the time which I thought was really interesting, and it really turned into something else. He said, we just got each other. We got along, and then there came this sort of backlash from that comment, almost from people saying, well, that's the problem with hiring in the NFL, is that we don't have a lot of people in power who are minorities that can say, well, I look like this guy, or we just got each other. Were you expecting that as part of that process when he said that?
I honestly, like, black coaches say don't pay. I didn't even hear that. I didn't. Yeah. I didn't know that. I mean, I think that the hiring of minority coaches is something that has to be improved and has to be fixed. And so let me start there. There's so many guys that are deserving of an opportunity, and that's all people need sometimes. I'll just say this, like, if Steve Adazio doesn't leave after year 2 and the Temple players don't say, please just bring a guy back that we know, I never get a head coaching job. I'm coaching the tight ends, in the NFL right now. So, I recognize that I'm only here because I got an opportunity, because someone was familiar with me. That being said, I would say that I clicked with Mr. Tepper, not on, us having similar backgrounds or anything like that, but I think really just on, this is how I see football, and it's how he sees his business and how he sees football. And so I think that alignment is what I call it. That alignment, when you share the same vision, the same belief, that's the only way this works. If you don't have that alignment, if you don't believe the same things, doesn't mean you don't disagree. But if you don't believe the same things, you're never going to be successful. And that's how I felt. That's how I felt when I met Mr. Tepper. And that's why I was willing to, I picked up and moved my family from a place we were really happy. I mean, people talk a lot about, you had a long contract. I had the same contract at Baylor, pretty much. Like, Baylor had made an unbelievable commitment to me. So it was really more about Mr. Tepper and believing in who he was, and looking at a place in Carolina that has not won a Super Bowl, and saying to them, they've had great years. They've been to the Super Bowl, and John Fox is a great friend of mine. Ron Rivera is a man I respect, so I say that respectfully. But, it's not very often in life you have a chance to try to go be the first. And so I said to myself, new owner, a guy that I understand, which was a tremendous opportunity. Let's give it a shot, and let's go try to make this thing work. And I've loved every day of it since.
You said something really interesting there, because you knew you had accomplished what needed to be done at Temple. You knew you had accomplished what needed to be done at Baylor. In your mind, what will it take for you to feel like I did what I needed to do here with the Carolina Panthers?
I'm a unique person. Not unique. I look at things, I'm the same as a lot of people, but like I look at things very simply. Like I don't say, hey, like I'm here to win the Super Bowl. So I don't say I'm here to win the Lombardi Trophy. Obviously, that's our mission every year. We want to get it done. But I want to build. And when I say all of us, I want us to build the best franchise in the National Football League, from the way that we travel to the way that we do things, the way that we treat people. Like, to me, everything is part of it. How you do anything is how you do everything. So I want to be a part of the best organization in pro football, and maybe even the best organization in pro sports. Now, that's a tall task, and that's respectful of everybody else. We might be tied with a lot of other people, but I want to be able to say, hey, we do things at a level that no one else does, or that very few do. And so that's when that's done. I think that winning and championships and trophies and rings, I think all of that comes when you have that purpose. And I learned that from Tom Coughlin. Everything was important to Coach Coughlin. And so I want to do that. If we have success, it's not going to be like, all right, well, that's good, let's end it. Like, to me, it's when I feel like we've done all that we can do and there's nothing else left to accomplish. And at this level, there's really no other level to go to. So, I want to see how long I can do this at a high level.
And we'll see how far you go this year, in year 2, as the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. Matt, listen, it's been great talking to you. Obviously, I consider you a friend, and I wish you all the best this year. And we'll see what happens with the Panthers in 2021. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
So thanks to Matt Rhule, and best of luck in his second season as the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. We'll see if he can rebuild an NFL team the way he's done it several times in college. Coming up next, though, it's a regularly scheduled episode of Half Forgotten History with my friend Trent Dilfer. His story has been remarkable, from somewhat of a failure as a high draft pick with the Tampa Bay Bucs to finding redemption as a member of the Baltimore Ravens, and then heartbreak and finding his purpose after the loss of one of his children. That's all ahead in the next episode of Half Forgotten History with my friend Trent Dilfer. We'll see you then.